Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the surprisingly tangled world of Viking haircuts. And trust me, it's not all braids and beards like you might think. Picture yourself walking through the misty streets of a bustling Viking settlement, the scent of smoked fish and leather filling the air. A cold wind rattles the wooden shutters, and somewhere in the distance, a blacksmith hammers out a rhythm that feels both ancient and oddly comforting. You see, back then, a man's haircut wasn't just about style. It was practically a social contract. Cutting your hair too short or too long could get you in more trouble than a drunken brawl at the mead hall. There's a story, whispered among the traders, that a single slip of the shears once sparked an entire legal dispute that lasted longer than some Viking marriages. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment below with your location and what time you're tuning in. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wander down a winding alley of weathered wood and iron hinges, the kind of place where the air itself seems to murmur secrets. That's where you find him, a young sunburned haircutter named Bjorn. His fingers are stained with a dozen shades of dye, berries, charcoal, maybe even a bit of beet juice if rumors hold any truth. He's squinting at the head of a local chieftain, who's ordered a trim. But as Bjorn's knife glides through the hair, he nicks off a chunk that by law should have remained. That's right, there's a law, a real one, that says a man's hair must be at least 1 thumb's width below the earlobe or else. And by or else, I mean you could be fined a pig, exiled to a frozen island, or worse, get your own head shaved in shame. You stand there, trying not to stare as Bjorn's hands tremble. He looks up at the chieftain, who's gone redder than a well-cooked sausage. The crowd around them hushes, waiting for the inevitable thunder. The tension is thicker than a honey glaze on a roasting boar. See, hair in Viking culture wasn't just hair, it was identity, status, and an unspoken promise of loyalty. Cutting it wrong was like messing with someone's social credit score, and back then there was no app to fix it. Bjorn's knife clatters to the floor as the chieftain bellows about dishonor and betrayal of the sacred locks. The Iowa townsfolk gasp as if a god himself had descended with a lightning bolt. Some are already whispering about calling the local thing, that's the Viking court, to settle the matter. Others are passing bets on whether Bjorn's new nickname will be Earless. A woman nearby, hair piled high like a stack of pancakes, leans in and mutters something about the last time a haircutter messed up. They made him wear a fishskin hat for a year, she says. You can't help but grin. Some punishments never go out of style. Even the goats tethered nearby seem to be eyeing the scene, as if expecting a free haircut themselves. You brush a strand of hay from your sleeve and wonder what the Viking HR department would have to say about this situation. Probably not much. But here's the twist. Historians still argue about whether this hair-length law was a real codified rule or more of an unspoken code. Some claim it was written into regional law codes like the Gulleting law. Others think it was more of a local custom, enforced by the threat of a good old-fashioned head shaving. Either way, it's one of those charmingly odd details that make Viking society so fascinating. As the chieftain's face looms over Bjorn, you can practically smell the panic sweat. His fingers clutch the shears as if they might save him from an angry Norse god. And yet, in that moment, you realize this is the price of style in a time when even a haircut could decide your fate. So next time you're at the barbershop, be thankful all you have to worry about is whether the stylist gives you a mullet. At least they won't banish you to a frozen island. Probably. You shuffle along a narrow street, drawn by the smell of roasting meat and the metallic tang of sweat. The air crackles with energy as traders bark prices and children dart between stalls, clutching wooden toys. You drift toward a gathering of older men in woolen cloaks, their hands fluttering like gulls as they argue about, of all things, the perfect hair length for a man of good standing. A bald man with a thick mustache, long enough to tickle his own collar, waves a brittle parchment in the air. Hey, it says here, he booms, no hair shall fall shorter than 1 tack above the ear, or the offending party shall pay 3 silver marks. The crowd leans in, some with knowing smirks, others with skeptical frowns. A woman selling fish glares at him, muttering, "What if the man's hair grows faster than a barley field? Should he be fined for nature's own mischief?" She gestures dramatically with a slimy herring, and the crowd erupts in laughter. You can't help but notice the tension beneath the laughter, a tight, almost invisible thread that binds every person here. They all know the rule. Hair was more than vanity. It was a sign of your place in the world. A short crop might mean you'd fought in battle, or worse, that you'd been shamed and shorn like a thief. You edge closer and spot a frail, grey-haired lawyer hunched over a wooden table, scribbling notes in a ledger. His quill scratches like 1,000 tiny swords. He's the one tasked with enforcing the hair laws today, and he looks every bit the part of a man who's never known a bad hair day. Beside him stands a red-faced vendor. His hair, suspiciously short, reveals the white lines of an uneven tan. His eyes dart between the lawyer and the crowd, and you can practically see the sweat on his upper lip. "I only cut it because the lice were winning," he pleads. "Is that a crime now?" The lawyer clears his throat, his voice high and nasal. "That's not the question, good merchant. The question is whether you cut your hair shorter than one tack without proper cause." And by proper cause, he adds with a smirk, "I do not mean lice." Somewhere behind you, a small boy snickers and says, "Hope they don't measure my hair." His friend shushes him, eyes wide. The tension thickens like cold porridge. A hush falls over the crowd. Even the goats in their pens stop chewing. You feel the weight of this moment, like the next breath might decide whether the vendor goes home tonight or finds himself locked in the stocks, head shaved for all to see. You're no lawyer, but you can see the absurdity of it all. Yet, in this society, hair was a tapestry of meaning, woven from battle, honor, and the fragile dance of power. A mere inch too short, and you could lose respect, trade privileges, or worse. Some historians think these rules were ways to control the restless spirits of men who swung axes for fun. Others think it was about taxes. Short hair, fewer braids, less tribute owed. After all, every hair tied in a braid could be taxed by weight. Sounds ridiculous, but hey, some people still collect tolls on bridges no one crosses anymore. As the lawyer drones on, the vendor's eyes dart left and right like a cornered fox. "If I grow it back," he offers weakly, "will that be enough to avoid punishment?" A murmur ripples through the crowd. The lawyer pauses, his quill poised. "Perhaps," he says, voice slow as honey. "If you can regrow it before the next full moon, otherwise the fine stands." You bite your lip to stifle a laugh. The full moon, that's barely enough time to grow a decent beard, let alone the thick locks these people consider proper. The vendor's shoulders sag. The lawyer stamps the parchment with a flourish, and the crowd disperses like crows startled by thunder. You exhale, realizing you've been holding your breath. Even the goats seem to relax. As you drift away, you can't help but think about the next time you complain to your barber about a bad cut. At least no one's weighing your hair or threatening to exile you to some ice-choked island. Probably. You wander farther down the winding street, the distant clang of blacksmith hammers fading behind you. The air grows dense with the scent of pine tar and the slow crackle of fires left to die overnight. You turn a corner and nearly bump into a group of men clustered around a barrel of half-empty mead mugs. Their hair, some short and bristling like pig's bristles, others long enough to braid into a rope, tells a tale before their mouths do. A wiry man with a grin sharper than a sword hisses through his teeth. "They think they can keep us under. The same rules." He gestures to the others who nod solemnly. "But we, the Skegspiot, we decide what style rules our land." You catch a flicker of rebellion in his eyes, a spark that suggests more than a passing argument about hair length. This is politics, or at least Viking politics, which is a curious blend of drinking contests, wrestling, and the occasional beheading. His comrade, whose hair is slicked back with something that might be goose fat, slams a fist on the barrel. "We've had enough of these so-called laws," he growls. "It's time the Skegspiot decide which style matters, and who gets to wear it." You tilt your head. Skegspiot, beard spears, a name that sounds both ridiculous and terrifying. It turns out that in some regions, the local barbers, more like hair shamans, held enormous power. They were the gatekeepers of respectability. determining who got a braid long enough to impress the jarls and who left the shop looking like a half-plucked chicken. A single cut could mean the difference between a seat at the feasting table and a seat in the mud. The Skegspjot were rumoured to have written their own secret hair codes, unofficial naturally, scribbled in the margins of old law books and passed around like recipes for mead. Some codes demanded elaborate top braids for every man over 30. Others dictated that warriors must shave the left side of their heads before going into battle, supposedly to show they feared nothing, even an uneven haircut. Historians still argue whether these codes were serious or just the Viking equivalent of locker room banter. Some believe they were a genuine attempt to challenge the thing, the governing assembly, by creating hair-based factions. Others say it was simply a power grab by ambitious barbers, eager to raise their rates. You can almost see it. Two groups of men, one with braids swinging like battle standards, the other with hair hacked short as a punishment for rebellion. You wonder if they met in alleys like this one, whispering of coups and secret combs, while their neighbors sharpened axes and pretended not to notice. The wiry man's eyes glitter. Tonight, we decide. No more paying taxes to the jarls. Barber. No more waiting 3 months for a trim. We take back the shears, we take back the pride. He lifts his mug and the others cheer, foam dribbling down their chins. You think of Bjorn from earlier, trembling with his knife caught between tradition and the wrath of a red-faced chieftain. How different would his life have been if he'd joined the Skegspjot? A voice cuts through your reverie. They say a rival group wants to outlaw the undercut, someone murmurs, eyes darting like a startled hare. Claim it's a threat to the unity of the clan. You can't help but chuckle. The undercut, an ancient style that's still popular in modern barbershops. Who knew it could bring down a government? The man with the goose-fat hair leans close, breath hot with mead. We have spies in every village, he whispers, even in the jarls' halls. They'll never see it coming. The others nod grimly. The weight of their ambitions hangs in the air like smoke from a dying fire. You step back, wondering how much longer this rebellion would last, or if, by morning, the Skegspjot would be nothing but another hair-raising tale told over a pint. In that flickering torchlight, you glimpse the fragile dance of power and pride. One slip of the shears, one rebellious lock of hair, and the entire balance could tip. The Vikings might have feared many things, but a barber's knife in the wrong hands was surely near the top of the list. You leave the dim alley behind, your footsteps echoing on the rough cobblestones as the night air sharpens like a blade. The sounds of feasting fade, replaced by the low murmur of a gathering at the longhouse. Smoke coils from its thatched roof, carrying the scent of roasted lamb and wet wool. You push open the heavy door and warmth, thick and heavy, envelops you like a bear's hug. Inside, the place is packed with men and women, hair glinting in the firelight. Some neatly braided, others wild as if the wind itself had styled them. At the center, on a throne of carved oak, sits Jarl Einar, his hair a magnificent river of silver that cascades over his shoulders like a god's own banner. A hush falls as he lifts a goblet, its rim lined with runes, and clears his throat. We meet tonight, he says, voice rough as a raven's call, to decide the fate of our people's hair, our pride, our history, our honor. You stifle a laugh, but then you see the faces around you, serious, solemn, eyes burning with the weight of their ancestors. A single hair out of place could mean the difference between loyalty and betrayal. Beside Einar, a scribe scrawls notes with frantic energy. You spot his hair, short, uneven, hacked like a goat's backside. You guess he's too busy recording history to worry about style. Jarl Einar lifts a parchment high. The gulleting law, he announces, says that any man who dares to trim his hair shorter than the width of 2 barley corns below the ear shall pay 3 silver marks, or surrender a year's worth of harvest. A collective gasp. Even the goats outside the longhouse bray in protest. A burly warrior with a half-shaved head, hair long on one side, bald on the other, jumps up, sloshing mead down his tunic. That law is older than my grandfather's shield, he bellows. What about the new times? We've traded with the Irish, the Franks, even the Byzantines. They wear their hair short as a plough blade. Einar's eyes narrow, his silver mane catching the torchlight. And look what happened to them, he hisses. conquered, taxed, forced to pay tribute to men with longer hair and longer swords. You shift uncomfortably, feeling every eye in the room flicker over your own hair. It's an uneasy realization. Style is a weapon here. A woman with hair woven in 1,000 tiny braids stands, her voice trembling. "My son wants to join the Varangian Guard," she says. "He must cut his hair short to wear the helmet. Will he be exiled for serving in the East?" The Jarl hesitates, fingers drumming on his goblet. A hush so deep you can hear the embers pop. "Some historians," he growls, "still argue whether the law was meant for all Vikings or just the free men of the northern clans. The thing has yet to decide." A ripple of murmurs, some sympathetic, others hard as old oak. You glance around, feeling the air tighten like a noose. The tension is thicker than a blacksmith's apron. You imagine the young boy she spoke of, standing proud. In foreign lands, head shorn for battle, yet carrying the shame of 1,000 years of custom. A man in the corner coughs, raising a mug. "Then let's vote tonight," he calls, voice ragged. "Do we hold to the old ways or embrace the new?" Eyes turn to Einar. He raises his goblet, his hair gleaming like polished silver. "Let the thing decide," he declares. A cheer rises, as uneven as the hairstyles in the room. You feel the weight of history, the clash of old and new, and wonder, is this how revolutions begin, one hair at a time? The scribes bend their heads, their quills scratching like 1,000 tiny swords. You wonder if tomorrow's scrolls will record this moment as the night the hair laws changed, or the night they hardened like iron. You slip out the longhouse, your breath a cloud in the cold air. A single lock of hair falls across your brow, and for a moment you imagine the weight of a law older than any king pressing down on your neck. It's a humbling thought, and one that lingers long after the fire's glow fades. You leave the longhouse behind, your mind still buzzing with the voices and echoes of that heated debate. The night air bites your skin like an eager hound, and the stars gleam overhead, silent witnesses to centuries of tangled laws and tangled hair. You find yourself following a path that winds through the outskirts of the settlement, where the wooden homes lean together like old friends sharing secrets. You pause as a flicker of torchlight catches your eye. A small group huddles around a table made from a broken shield, their heads bent low. You draw closer, curiosity pulling you in. Their hair, some tangled in rough knots, others shaved into harsh lines, tells you everything. These are the Word Weavers, a secret council of barbers turned lawmakers who believe hair is destiny. One of them, a stooped figure with eyes like dark honey, leans forward. "Did you bring the special ink?" she rasps, her fingers stained. "From years of brewing dye from berries and iron filings." The others nod. A small clay pot is produced and she pries it open with a careful hand. Inside, the ink glistens blacker than the new moon. You watch as she begins to write on a strip of parchment. The strokes deliberate, each line a delicate dance between history and rebellion. She mutters under her breath, "No man shall wear hair braid longer than his enemies, lest he provoke the gods." A man beside her, a warrior with one ear missing, snorts. "The gods have better things to do than measure hair," he scoffs. "But if it keeps the young ones from fighting over every lock, let it be written." You can't help but smile. The absurdity of it all tickles something deep inside. Yet you sense the gravity here too. These laws were born from the chaos of raids and blood feuds, from the need to impose order in a world that often felt as wild as the sea. The woman pauses, her eyes darting up to meet yours. "Some historians," she says softly, "believe these laws were meant to divide the warriors from the thralls, a way to mark the free from the bound, the mighty from the meek." Her voice drops to a whisper. "But others argue it was simply the Jarl's way to collect more taxes. Every braid weighed and measured, every lock accounted for." You picture it, a line of men, heads bowed, as a stern-faced clerk lifts a scale and records each strand, like a miser counting coins. A breeze ruffles your hair, and you think about how something as simple as a haircut could spark a rebellion or settle a score. The warrior with the missing ear leans close, his breath hot with ale. "They say a man once challenged the Jarl's son to a duel because his hair was a finger's width too short. Can you believe it?" He laughs, a short, bitter bark. You nod, eyes wide, as he continues. They fought for hours, blades flashing, like lightning. In the end, the Jarl's son lost an ear, and the barber who'd cut his hair fled to the mountains, never to be seen again. A chill runs down your spine. The woman with the ink closes the pot, sealing it with wax. Tonight, she intones, we record the latest amendment. No man shall be shorn during the harvest feast for fear of offending the harvest gods. The others nod solemnly. You wonder if they truly believe it, or if it's just another way to control the restless souls who prowl these lands. A goat bleats somewhere in the darkness, reminding you of that poor vendor from earlier. You can almost hear his desperate voice. The lice were winning. Is that a crime now? You step back, the torchlight casting long shadows on the ground. The weird weavers continue their work, heads bent, their ink-stained fingers dancing across. The parchment like spiders weaving a web. You turn away, the night pressing in around you. Even here in the shadows, the weight of tradition feels heavier than any helmet. You imagine tomorrow's dawn, when the new law will spread like wildfire, and with it, the same old debates. You sigh, running a hand through your own hair. At Tilm, at least no one's measuring it tonight. But tomorrow, that's another story. You drift farther from the glow of the word weavers' torches, the air thick with wood smoke and the tang of salt from the nearby fjord. The path narrows, hemmed in by ancient stones, some cracked and moss-covered, others bearing faint carvings of ships and serpents. A hush settles over the night, save for the occasional hoot of an owl or the wind playing tricks with the branches. You sense movement up ahead, a solitary figure hunched over a grindstone, sparks flying in brief, bright arcs. You approach carefully, noting his hair, a shock of red, unruly as a bramble bush, topped with a ragged headband that looks more like a strip of tanned hide than an accessory. He looks up, eyes bleary but sharp as a hawk's. Ah, another seeker of the old ways, he says, his voice a rough melody. Come closer. Let me tell you about the Great Tonsure Ban. You blink. The Great Tonsure Ban, it sounds like a bedtime story cooked up by a mischievous uncle. He wipes sweat from his brow and continues. Long ago, during the reign of King C, Olaf, the churchman, those men with robes and crosses, decided to banish the tonsure. His lips twist in a grin. They called it pagan, a mark of shame, they said. But the warriors, they didn't take kindly to losing their sacred shave. He drags a finger across his scalp, miming a razor slicing a path from front to back. The tonsure was a sign of devotion to Odin himself. At least, that's what the old skalds claimed. You'd cut the hair right down the center, like a river, parting the land, leaving two braids to flow like twin fjords. You can't help but chuckle at the image, like a reverse mohawk, but twice as complicated. The red-haired man's eyes gleam in the firelight. Some historians, he says, still argue whether the tonsure was truly sacred or just a convenient way to keep lice from nesting in your scalp. Either way, when the priests forbade it, the warriors rebelled. He pauses, sharpening his blade with slow, deliberate strokes. Sparks dance and die at his feet. There were battles, small but fierce, over that simple strip of hair. Brothers fought brothers, cousins turned on cousins, all because some bishop didn't want Odin's mark on his flock. You lean closer, the night pressing in like a woolen cloak. So what happened, you ask? The man's grin grows wider, his teeth catching the firelight. The band stood. Some warriors fled to the isles, their tonsures hidden beneath iron helms. Others stayed, shaving their heads in secret like criminals. Even today, some say the old tonsure curse lives on. Any man who dares to wear it will bring misfortune on his household. A shiver runs down your spine. The wind stirs your hair, and for a heartbeat, you wonder if the tonsure ban still lurks in the shadows of these lands. He leans back, blade gleaming. You know, he says, the Jarls might argue all day about hair length, but it was the tonsure that nearly broke the clans apart. A simple line carved on the scalp, and the world trembled. You think of all the other rules you've heard, the barleycorn measurements, the braid taxes, the undercut bans, and yet it's the tonsure that seems to carry the deepest scar. Reminder that even the simplest things can carry the weight of war. The man lifts his blade, inspecting its edge. I've sharpened this enough for tonight, he says. But remember, traveler, the hair you wear tells the world who you are and who you might become. You nod, a solemn promise lingering in the air. The embers glow and fade, the night stretching on like an unending braid of darkness. As you walk away, your hair feels suddenly heavy, as if every strand is a thread connecting you to the old stories. You can almost hear the distant voices, priests, warriors, rebels arguing in the wind. It's a reminder that in the world of the Vikings, hair was never just hair. It was rebellion, tradition, identity, and perhaps in some strange way, it still is. The path twists, leading you away from the grindstone's dying glow and deeper into the night's embrace. A drizzle begins, fine as a lover's whisper, sticking to your hair, your face, your eyelashes. It chills you, but you press on, drawn by an unspoken pull that tugs at your thoughts like a child's curious fingers. Through a gap in the trees, you glimpse torchlight again, this time flickering with a restless energy. You follow it until you reach a circle of standing stones. Old, cracked and worn by 1,000 winters. Figures gather there. Elders, young warriors, and even a few children, their hair glistening with raindrops like tiny gemstones. In the center, an old woman sits on a stone that looks suspiciously like it once served as an altar. Her hair is long, silvered with age and coiled around her neck like a living serpent. She raises a hand and the murmurs hush. "Tonight," she croaks, "we speak of the law of braid tithes." A ripple of discomfort runs through the crowd. You step closer, the rain seeping into your cloak. The woman's voice cracks like dry wood as she continues. "Long ago, the kings of the north decreed that every warrior must offer a braid of hair each midsummer to their jarl's hall, a token of loyalty, and a way to keep the hair merchants fat with silver." A young man, his own braid barely a hand's length, shifts nervously. "My father told me it was to strengthen the bonds of kinship," he mutters. She snorts. Kinship. It was taxes in all but name. The hair was measured, weighed and sold, woven into banners, charms, or the jarl's own bedding, if you believe the old tales. A nervous laugh ripples through the crowd. You imagine sleeping under a blanket of someone else's hair and shudder. Some historians, the woman intones, argue that the braid tithe was meant to show respect for the gods, an offering of your strength to the All-Father. Others claim it was simply a way for the jarls to keep their people in line, one hair at a time. A child, no older than 7, pipes up, voice high and sweet. "Did the braids ever get stolen?" The old woman's eyes gleam. "Aye, little one. There were raiders who prowled the roads, snatching braid tithes from traveling merchants. They'd weave the hair into cursed ropes or sell it to witches who claimed it would bind the soul of any warrior whose hair they possessed." A hush falls, as if every shadow in the circle leans closer to listen. You feel a chill that's not just from the rain. A man at the edge of the crowd, his hair tied with a leather cord, steps forward. "But what happened if you refused to pay the braid tithe, the fee?" Old woman's face hardens. "Then your family risked the shame of exile. No home, no kinship, no fire to warm your bones. Worse still, your hair could be cut in punishment, a sign of cowardice visible to all, a collective shiver. You find your fingers unconsciously brushing your own hair, imagining the cold blade of justice." She leans back, her eyes closed, as if listening to voices only she can hear. The law of braid tithes lasted until the Great Hair Uprising, when the people rose against the jarls and declared their hair their own. Some say the uprising was sparked by a single plait stolen from a bride on her wedding day. A man mutters, under his breath. Or maybe it was just taxes. We always fight when the taxes come. A chuckle rises, small, but enough to break the tension. The old woman opens her eyes, pinning you with a gaze that's seen more nights than you can count. "So remember this. Every strand you wear carries a story. Every braid could be a blessing or a curse." You step back, the drizzle intensifying. The stones loom around you like silent witnesses to an ancient ritual. As you leave the circle, you can almost feel the weight of those old braids, collected, measured, traded like silver, woven into the fabric of every jarl's power. The rain drips from your hair, mingling with your thoughts, each drop carrying a fragment of history that refuses to be forgotten. You wander beyond the stone circle, the drizzle finally giving way to a thick fog that wraps around you like a conspirator's cloak. The path beneath your boots is slick, the moss giving a muffled hush to your steps. You pause beneath a twisted yew tree, its gnarled branches clawing at the sky. In the mist you sense more than shadows, a hum of something older than even the lore of braid tithes. A faint glow emerges through the fog. A lone cottage, its roof sagging under the weight of time. A faint wisp of smoke curls from the chimney, promising warmth. Though you suspect no amount of fire could banish the chill now settled in your bones. You push open the rough wooden door, its hinges groaning like a dying raven. Inside, the air smells of damp wool and old iron. A single candle flickers on a rough-hewn table, its light dancing across the features of the man who waits there. His hair, long, wild, streaked with grey, spills over his shoulders like a waterfall of shadows. His eyes meet yours, sharp and knowing. "Ah, the wanderer returns," he rasps, voice dry as old parchment. "Come to hear the final tale of the Viking hair laws." You nod, stepping closer, drawn by the gravity of his presence. He gestures to a stool. "Sit then. This is the story of the Last Hair Tribunal." You lower yourself carefully, every creak of the stool echoing in the hush. The man leans forward, his fingers tracing the edge of the candle's halo. "In the twilight of the Viking age," he begins, "when the old ways clashed with the new faith, the Jarls convened one final council to decide the fate of the hair. Laws. The Last Hair Tribunal, they called it. A gathering of warriors, priests, and even thralls, every rank united to settle once and for all who had the right to grow, cut, or shave their hair." A log pops in the hearth, sending a shower of sparks into the gloom. You can almost see the tribunal, men and women with braids like battle standards, their eyes fierce with purpose. "They argued for days," the man continues, some demanding strict codes to maintain order, others insisting hair was a personal freedom too sacred to legislate. "Some historians," he adds with a sly grin, "still debate whether the tribunal's outcome was even recorded properly, whether it was a true decree or a drunken scrawl on a scrap of sheepskin." You laugh softly, imagining a mighty council undone by too much mead and too little sense. "But the decision," he says, voice dropping to a near whisper, "was that no man or woman should be forced to wear their hair a certain way, yet neither should they dishonor their kin by flaunting disrespectful styles. It was compromise, Viking style. Everyone left a little unhappy." A smile plays at the corner of his mouth. "They say one warrior, so enraged by the outcome, shaved his head clean in protest and ran off to join the monks. Others claimed he lost his mind." You shake your head, unable to hold back a grin. "Even in the deepest shadows of history, it seems people just wanted to be themselves and found ways to argue about it." He leans back, hair catching the candlelight like a cloak of embers. "So you see," he says, "hair was more than hair. It was a banner, a shield, a curse, a tax. It could start a feud or heal one. It held the weight of law and the hope of rebellion." His gaze softens and his voice grows gentle. "And now, traveler, you've heard the tales, the secrets of Viking haircuts, how they shaped a people, bound them together, and sometimes tore them apart." You nod slowly, the fog outside pressing against the window like a ghost. He closes his eyes. "Some say the old hair laws are gone, but I think they live on, hidden in every braid and every blade that slices through a lock. Remember that. Next time you pick up a comb." The candle gutters, its light trembling like a dying star. You rise, your hair damp and heavy, every strand a thread in the vast tapestry of history. You step into the fog, the wind whispering secrets only you can hear. And as the night deepens, you carry those stories with you, a tangle of truth and legend that refuses to fade. Now, the night has grown thick and quiet, like a blanket pulled snug around your shoulders. The wind eases, leaving behind a hush that feels almost holy. Your breath comes slower now, your eyelids heavy with the weight of all you've seen and heard. The candle's glow lingers in your mind, warm and gentle, even as the darkness settles in. The man's voice echoes in the corners of your thoughts, a lullaby of braids and battles, taxes and tonsures, each one a thread in the long winding braid of history. You let the world slip away, the hum of old voices fading like the last notes of a distant song. Each story settles in your chest, comforting and familiar, wrapping around your heart like a favorite blanket. Sleep comes softly now, the shadows welcoming you with open arms. And as you drift, the candlelight remains. A promise that these tales will wait for you always. End of script. Sweet dreams.